How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, my apartment is pretty much empty, and that's because we're actually moving out of this beautiful loft that we've been living in for the past little while. Now, just like there's big changes happening in my life, so too has there been big changes in the entire Canadian rewards landscape. And in this video, it's been a while since we've had one of these casual catching up conversations, so that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to catch up with you guys and give you guys my impressions about some of the big changes that are coming up very soon. The most important one is obviously the new Aeroplan program. Last week, we made a very detailed video with lots of production value in there about all the details of the new Aeroplan that you need to know. So today, I just wanted to keep it lighthearted and give you some of my honest, unfiltered impressions about the program, as well as what that new Aeroplan program means for the whole miles and points strategy in Canada going forward. So without further ado, if you enjoy these videos, as always, give them a like and a subscribe right now before the video starting to help out with the YouTube algorithm, and otherwise, we'll get started right now. Now, if you're not fully caught up on the specifics of the new program and you would like to learn about the new program in detail, then we've actually created a whole bunch of other resources that you can go to, including a 30-minute in-depth video that introduces you to the program, as well as last weekend I hosted a live study session on the new program to help you, understand step-by-step how everything in the new program works. That live study session also contained a live chat, live conversation with two of the guys who actually made the new program, working at Air Canada and getting their perspectives as well. Then, of course, over on princeoftravel.com, I've written like 10 or 12 different articles over the past couple of weeks, all focused on the new Aeroplan program, giving you all the information about everything that's new with the program, everything that doesn't exist currently, as well as doing a little bit of analysis as to the pros and cons of the new program, the positive changes, the negative changes, any awards that are devaluing as of November 8th that you should be booking right now, as well as comparing the new Aeroplan to some of the other programs that we have at our disposal here in Canada. Kind of like, we're gonna touch upon in this video as well. There's no shortage of resources out there to learn about the new Aeroplan, but in this video, I wanted to give you some of my impressions as an Aeroplan user, as somebody who will, for sure be redeeming hundreds of thousands of Aeroplan miles, or should I say Aeroplan points, going forward over the next few years, what I make of the changes, what I plan to strategize around, and yeah, some of my honest, unfiltered impressions. So let's begin with a quick summary of the positive and the negative changes that we're going to see from Aeroplan as of November 8th. On the positive side, no more fuel surcharges. That's obviously going to be a very welcome change. There's going to be the ability to add a stopover on a one-way flight, which is going to open up so many possibilities for more flexible travel and more, the ability to tailor your trip exactly to your preferences. Compared to right now, you only get one stopover on a round trip. In the future, you get to pay 5,000 points for a stopover on a one-way. And then we've also got a handful of brand new features, which I think is going to be very popular among Aeroplan members. This includes things like the family sharing, which allows families to pool all their points together and get to the rewards much faster as a result, as well as the new priority rewards, which is a reward for the elite status members that allows them to get 50% off any Aeroplan redemption, any eligible Aeroplan redemption, depending on your elite status level. And I think those are going to be very well received as well. So I think everyone can agree that those are the outright positive changes. Now we can then talk about some changes that are, decidedly mixed in terms of positive versus negative. And I think there's two changes in this category. The first is the flight reward charts, which gives us a few new sweet spots compared to now, a few redemptions that are cheaper than before, but the vast majority of them are more expensive than before. And that's decidedly, a negative aspect of that change. Now, the other mixed change that in my opinion, can leave some positive, some negative, some winners and losers, that's going to be the dynamic pricing on Air Canada. So both of those are very much mixed, and we'll actually talk more about it later in the video as well. For now, I wanted to talk about the negative changes, right? So obviously one of the biggest negatives, as we just touched upon, is the fact that most flight rewards are going up in price. And in some cases, we're seeing pretty steep increases of 30%, 40%, in some cases even higher than 50%, like 75% in some cases. Besides the increase in the award costs, the other big negative change we're seeing is on the flight earning side. So for Air Canada flights, instead of calculating the number of miles or points that you earn based on the distance that you're flying, instead it's going to be calculated based on the fare that you're paying. All right, so now that we've summarized all the changes, let's go through and I'll give you my impressions one by one, starting with the new flight rewards. Am I happy about the fact that the new award chart is basically increasing across the board with very few exceptions? No, I'm not happy. Do I think it's healthy or useful to dwell on the fact that those changes are negative? Also no. See, the thing is, once you've been in this game for a long time, you come to realize that there are no opportunities that are going to be around forever, right? Everything comes and goes, and that's why it's so important to always be earning and burning. So if I'm being honest, coming into this year, coming into 2020, knowing that there was going to be a new Aeroplan on the horizon, I was definitely expecting a pretty brutal devaluation across the board. And I think this new Aeroplan chart that we got now, it's brutal in some markets, but it's also less brutal in others. And so yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag between the good and the bad, like I was saying before. And I think compared to my expectations of brutal devaluation across the board, I'm more willing to accept the hand that we've been dealt. So at the end of the day, it depends on your perspective. If you're looking strictly at the change from the old chart to the new chart in isolation, then you're bound to be disappointed, and there's nothing that I can say to change that. But if you're looking at the big picture between the old program and all of its characteristics and the new program and all of its characteristics, then I think you'd be more willing to say, okay, yeah, this is a negative change. We've also had some positive changes that, at least we hope can offset these negative changes. Then let's talk about these new credit cards that we're about to see in the Canadian marketplace. So 10 of the 11 credit cards are going to be, rebrandings of existing products by TD, CIBC, and American Express. And there's going to be an 11th brand new product from American Express, which is going to be a premium business card, one that we've never seen before in Canada. And that's obviously very exciting. So I think in terms of the positioning of all these new credit cards, most of the focus is definitely being put on the premium level credit cards, right? So these are going to be the TD Aeroplan Visa Infinite Privilege, the CIBC Aeroplan Visa Infinite Privilege, and the American Express Aeroplan Reserve Card. And these cards are getting a whole bunch of new features, but their annual fees are also increasing by $100 to $200. So they're all going to be priced at $599 when they launch as of November 8th. And I almost feel like these three cards are looking to make the market a little bit in terms of premium credit cards in Canada. Because even though these cards existed in the past, there was never a lot of emphasis and hype and marketing around, the TD Aeroplan Visa Infinite Privilege and the CIBC's version and the Aeroplan Plus American Express Platinum card, which is what it is currently known as. And yeah, now it feels like they're trying to build up a lot of fanfare around these products and make it front and center among, the credit cards that the wealthier Canadian traveling public might consider. So I think it'll be interesting to see how these cards fit in alongside the American Express Platinum card, which is priced at a net $499, and the Business Platinum card versus this new Business Reserve card from American Express, and how that all plays out and how they all compare against each other in terms of the fees versus the benefits. So yeah, on American Express's side, I'll be curious how they position these new premium and core cards alongside their own membership rewards products. So the Platinum card and the Gold Rewards card, as well as their business equivalents, obviously. And then the other issuer that I thought was interesting is CIBC, because they've obviously got their own Aventura points going on. And in the past, they've promoted Aventura very heavily. and refrained kind of from promoting the Aeroplan cards. Whereas now, the new Aeroplan program looks like it's going to be offering significantly more value compared to the Aventura program, even for the average Canadian traveler, right, who doesn't want to spend a lot of time figuring out Aeroplan. Even if they're traveling within North America or to Hawaii or Mexico, the prices with Aeroplan, even with the dynamic charts in place, is looking a lot more favorable compared to Aventura, because you'll notice that even the higher bounds of the dynamic pricing range on Air Canada flights coincides with the default price point that's offered by programs like Aventura or Avion. So I'll be curious to see whether CIBC gives the new Aeroplan a more central role in its marketing compared to Aventura, or maybe if it even decides to spruce up Aventura a little bit to be more competitive. I think, more of a competitive edge among all the programs available to Canadians can only be a good thing. So listen guys, looks like I've got somewhere to be, but we're gonna resume this chat very soon. I'll be right back. And we're back. Where were we? So we just spoke about the new Aeroplan credit cards. Now let's talk about the new dynamic pricing model on Air Canada flights under the new Aeroplan. Now, on the one hand, this is obviously good news in the sense that it opens up more seats on Air Canada flights for Aeroplan members to book. Whereas in the past, you might have just found, no availability, sorry, you can't use your miles on this date. Nowadays, you'll be able to book every last seat on every flight. However, it also makes the pricing of the flight more unpredictable, because unlike partner awards where you know it's going to cost a certain fixed amount, with Air Canada, it could vary up and down within that published range of prices depending on the underlying cash fare. Now, in order to help us make sense of the availability patterns in the new program, Air Canada has come out and said that whatever availability we see now in the fixed mileage rewards should correspond to the availability that we see at the lower end of the published ranges across the entire Air Canada route network going forward. And note that this statement applies across the network and not necessarily in a specific market. Keep in mind though that having an Aeroplan credit card or Aeroplan Elite status, or preferably both, will provide a very meaningful discount on the price that you see as part of the dynamic pricing model. So all Aeroplan members will basically see different prices for Air Canada flights depending on whether they have the co-branded credit card, whether they have Elite status, and if they have both, it's a double boost. Ultimately, we can't really say more about the dynamic pricing model until we actually get to play around with the whole thing as of November 8th. But I would say that overall, everybody watching this video should have one of the credit cards by the time the new program launches. Shouldn't find it too hard to qualify for at least Aeroplan 25K status and get a little bit of Elite status to get that boost on the preferred pricing. And so overall, I think with the amount of savvy and technical know-how that we have among us, it shouldn't be too hard for us to find favorable pricing on Air Canada flights in both economy and business once the new program launches. That's my impression at least. So overall, if we were to zoom out and think about the new Aeroplan program as a whole, then I would say that there's definitely a mix of good and bad, but compared to the very bad devaluations that we've seen from loyalty programs in the past and that we've almost grown accustomed to and conditioned to in this community, there are actually many reasons to be positive. For myself, as an avid Aeroplan user, the feature I'm looking forward to the most is probably the ability to add a stopover on a one-way flight for only 5,000 Aeroplan points, because that's going to add a whole other layer of flexibility to all my travels. I'm going to be able to combine an Aeroplan redemption one way with a stopover with an Alaska redemption one way with a stopover on the way back, or let's say an Asia Miles redemption or an Avios redemption. Or I can use points, Aeroplan points in one direction and pay cash on the way back. And when I'm booking those flights, I no longer have to avoid Air Canada. I no longer have to avoid Lufthansa, the airlines that currently come with very, very high fuel surcharges, because in the new program, there's not going to be any surcharges at all. So, in the future, if I want to fly EVA Air, Singapore Airlines, Swiss, these airlines that currently don't have surcharges, I of course still have the option of doing so, but I also have the option of going with a more direct flight with Air Canada, with Lufthansa, on their very comprehensive global networks. And keep in mind, everything we know so far is only about 60% of the new Aeroplan. And we've received assurances that the remaining 40% is either going to be neutral or very positive. So I think we have a lot of things to look forward to until November 8th and beyond November 8th as we look to see what the new edition of Canada's most popular frequent flyer program has in store for us. Now, of course, Aeroplan isn't the only program that's looking at making changes sometime in 2020. And so now I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about the overall competitive landscape in terms of the Canadian loyalty programs. Starting with Air Canada's biggest competitor, WestJet. WestJet Rewards, right? An underrated, understated program here in Canada that nevertheless provided Canadians with a lot of value through the member exclusive fares, especially for domestic travel. However, in June of 2020, WestJet actually put their member exclusive fares on pause, and they announced that they were going to come back later this year with an evolved version of the member exclusive fares. And do I think this is a coincidence with Air Canada also launching their revamped loyalty program? Of course not. WestJet is hoping to respond strategically to Air Canada on the loyalty side so that they can continue competing with and challenging Air Canada as the second largest airline in the country. And in my view, WestJet has a very good opportunity here to address some of the weaknesses in the new Aeroplan program now that Air Canada has come out and thrown down the gloves and released all the details of the new Aeroplan. I think the most important part of the new member exclusive fares is going to be whether or not they keep it at a flat 125 WestJet dollars for any travel within Canada and the US. Because as we know with the new Aeroplan program, once you're traveling coast to coast, once your journey is over 2,750 miles in distance, then you're actually paying a lot more Aeroplan points than you are today for travel domestically. So if WestJet wants to come out ahead here and they want to win over a bunch of domestic travelers, then they really don't need to do anything with that fixed price point of 125 WestJet dollars one way for travel within Canada and the US. Just by leaving that price point untouched, WestJet is going to win over a bunch of travelers who would otherwise have to pay 17,500 Aeroplan points one way. Obviously, 125 WestJet dollars is going to be a far better deal. Having said that, I do think that WestJet should be looking at sprucing up other parts of their member exclusive fares. And in particular, they can be looking closely at addressing weaknesses that the new Aeroplan has left. So for example, a lot of Western Canadians are upset about the fact that travel to Europe is now a lot more expensive under the new Aeroplan, especially because as Western Canadians, they get penalized for having to travel longer distances compared to Eastern Canadians under the new distance-based chart. Now at the same time, WestJet is introducing business class on their Dreamliners out of their hub in Calgary. Wouldn't this be an excellent opportunity to offer a very compelling redemption price point for WestJet Dreamliner business class from Vancouver or Calgary to London? That would be a great way to win over a bunch of business from the Air Canada side, from disgruntled Western Canadian travelers as they look to travel to Europe. Ultimately, I do recognize that WestJet plays very much a challenger role in the Canadian market and that their resources are limited compared to Air Canada's. But I do think that there's a good opportunity for them to take their loyalty program more seriously, revamp it, and bring it in line with their aspirations as a full-fledged carrier with proper business class, proper lounges, and a proper loyalty program, and seek to provide value to Canadians in areas where the new Aeroplan program might provide less value. So those are some of my thoughts on the unknowns with the WestJet program. Obviously, the other big unknown in the landscape is the Alaska Airlines program and what's going to happen to Alaska miles when they join oneworld. Right now, we have preciously little information on that front, and they don't seem to be making their decisions based on the Canadian market. It's mostly going to be based on the US market, and we as Canadians who, we've got the MBNA card going, we're just going to have to respond and adapt to whatever Alaska puts out. I would say for the rest of 2020, from a broader point strategy perspective, it's going to be less about making big moves because of all the uncertainty around travel and around the credit card landscape. And it's more about watching and waiting and seeing how things play out and taking advantage of the last little period of the current sweet spots that we have with the old Aeroplan program and with the Alaska program, taking advantage of those sweet spots to book travel throughout 2021, and otherwise watching and seeing how things play out, because it's going to be a brand new landscape in 2021 with all these new programs coming in. We're definitely going through a bit of a transition period in the landscape with all sorts of different forces moving in different directions. We've got people, the general public, not really looking to travel, not really comfortable with the idea of travel. We've got the airlines and banks trying to incentivize travel, trying to incentivize consumer behavior. We're going to have, we're looking forward to the excellent Aeroplan credit cards with some amazing offers on them. On the other hand, issuers like American Express are still hurting financially, and we've seen them implement some pretty strict de-risking measures as well. So definitely lots of counterbalancing forces. It's going to be very interesting to see how everything shakes out. But yeah, in terms of strategy, it's, in my view, a time to keep your cards close, observe how everything plays out, and then make your moves sometime next year when travel starts to open up again. Now, speaking of travel, I remember when the pandemic was first starting out and everyone was wondering, will we be able to travel in June? Will we get to travel in July? Will we get to travel in August? And I think the way that things have played out has shown that, that's not really the right question to be asking in terms of will all of us be able to travel? So I can't really speak for any of you. I can't really speak for anyone but myself, really. I know that people have been traveling a fair bit in Canada this summer, and I also wanted to travel in August. I got a little busy, but I'm hoping to travel domestically a fair bit sometime in September. And then in October is the earliest that I'll be considering venturing outside of Canada. And if the 14-day quarantine requirement upon return is still in place by then that's something that I'm going to have to think very carefully about whether or not it's worthwhile. But I do want to head over to Europe sometime in October and spend some time there. And I've missed traveling. I think that Europe has controlled their caseloads to a reasonable degree, similar to Canada, so I'm comfortable there as long as I take the right precautions. And yeah, we'll see how it plays out. There's always going to be risks in traveling as long as the pandemic is still around. However, there are countries out there who have successfully managed the pandemic and are welcoming Canadian travelers. So between these two, it's up to every person to decide how much risk they're comfortable with. And since we're talking about the pandemic, I wanted to end this video on a note of gratitude to all of you who've been watching Prince of Travel, who've been reading the articles on my website, who've been attending the live streams that we do every couple of weekends, even at a time when nobody is traveling. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate everybody who's been supporting me and continuing to watch and read and benefit from the content that I put out. To be honest with you guys, ever since I started Prince of Travel in 2017, the website has seen growth year over year, and it was only this year that we had our first big external shock that brought our traffic and our viewership way down in March and April. And just like every other travel business in the industry, that was pretty tough to deal with at times. And during those moments, it was really through the fact that I could see we still had such a dedicated community reading and watching and attending our live streams on the weekends that I was convinced that this was very much a worthwhile endeavor and that I could continue to provide value to you guys with a view of travel recovering in the long term, as it has done in May, June, July, and August, that I can see from a numbers perspective. So once again, sincerely, thank you to everyone who's been a part of the Prince of Travel community, for being a part of this journey that we're all on together. And hey, as we navigate the upcoming changes in the rewards landscape, I hope you'll stick around for a long time. I'm gonna end the video there. I hope you've enjoyed this little catch-up conversation. And if so, please do hit the like button and subscribe to the Prince of Travel YouTube channel. Just click the subscribe button below the video. And let me know in the comments, now that we've had a few weeks to digest the details, what do you make of the new Aeroplan, as well as the ever-changing rewards landscape here in Canada? The next time we speak, it'll be somewhere else, and I'll see you then. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel.